Yo, I've seen this story before, man. An incredible game gets released between two AAA behemoths and it gets absolutely buried. And if you don't know what I'm referencing, I'm talking about Titanfall 2. And we all know Titanfall 2 is critically acclaimed, man. I mean, incredible movement, gunplay was awesome, the narrative was beautiful. But of course, it never stood a chance launching alongside Call of Duty and Battlefield, let alone Battlefield 1. I can't recall what Call of Duty launched that year, but it doesn't matter. Call of Duty is Call of Duty. Now, our beloved Arc Raiders is walking into this same storm. So it begs the question, will Arc Raiders survive this fall, or is history about to repeat itself, man? Let's dive in and talk shop a bit why I believe Arc Raiders actually can survive, and not just survive, but thrive, especially as long as we play the long game here. But actually, before we dive in, let's look back for a second and let's actually talk about Titanfall 2. So Titanfall 2 launched in 2016, and it actually was wedged between Battlefield 1 and I believe Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. And I know a lot of people didn't rock with Infinite Warfare, but it's Call of Duty. People are going to buy it anyways, right? So even though Titanfall 2 was the jam, it just didn't stand a chance because nobody really even knew it was a thing outside of your niche gamers that knew what Titanfall 1 was. But the casual gamer, they didn't pay no mind to Titanfall 2. They were locked in on Battlefield 1 or Infinite Warfare. But you know what though? I do have a theory in regard to why Titanfall 2 never really thrived, or there was never really like a massive resurgence. And I think it was due to something I call FPS fatigue. And just to summarize this, it's when players play these high-octane FPS titles like Battlefield or like Call of Duty, and after they've accomplished everything in the games, right? They've had these large only in Battlefield moments, or they've dropped multiple nukes in Call of Duty. They've completed camo challenges. They've done all of the above, right, over the course of several months. At that point, there isn't anything that's tying them to the game, and they're a bit burnt out from shooters in general, or first-person shooters in general, especially the ones that are high octane. So they look for other games to fill that time, whether if it's sports games, whether if it is JRPGs, or whether if it is another shooter, but just one that isn't necessarily competitive or respawn based or high octane, for lack of a better term. So if there was a player that was burnt out from Battlefield or from Call of Duty, Titanfall 2 wasn't going to be that answer. It wasn't going to be the breath of fresh air. I mean, they would probably boot it up and play it and say, man, this game feels incredible, the guns are awesome and everything, but FPS fatigue is FPS fatigue no matter what game it is. And see, that right there is why I believe Arc Raiders is different, because the only similarity that Arc Raiders has with Battlefield and with Call of Duty is that there are guns. Outside of that, Arc Raiders' DNA is totally different. The game is totally different and it plays totally different. So I believe in this case, once people do get that fatigue from Battlefield and or Call of Duty, that Arc Raiders could be a viable option for them to explore. If the consumer knows about it, that is. So Embark Studios, make sure y'all are marketing your tails off. I talked about that in another video, so I won't dive into that here. So one may ask, what does survivability look like for Arc Raiders? I would say first off, it means we don't need to panic about launch numbers. Small recap, we know Battlefield 6 drops October 10th. The Battle Royale is rumored to release October 28th. Black Ops 7 releases November 14th. So launch numbers may look underwhelming if you were to compare it to either one of those juggernauts. And again, that's just the reality of the situation, whether we like it or not. People buy and play Call of Duty. People are going to buy and play this Battlefield because the Battlefield is going to be fuego. And look, even if Call of Duty is major buns, they break their sales records every single year, so somebody's buying them or playing them, you know? But I want everybody to remember that low launch numbers does not equate to failure, not by a long shot, especially when we're talking a launch from a smaller studio. So in this case, Embark is just going to need to ignore all of that noise, all of the Reddit posts and all the tweets about this game possibly being dead on arrival if the player counts are low. And again, this is all hypothetical. The player counts could be through the roof on launch, and if that's the case, cool, we could throw this video out the window. But I'm just saying, if they are a bit underwhelming, Embark, I encourage you, disregard that and let's focus on laying a strong foundation. When it comes to this foundation, I actually split it into two phases, right? An initial phase and then a follow-up phase, right? So the first phase, I would say, is the first 3 months of Arc Raiders. And this is where As long as Arc Raider can check the box on these things, it will succeed long term here, and it will weather this current storm. Server stability. We got to make sure we hit that out of the park. This is actually a non-negotiable, especially when we're talking an extraction shooter, because if people can't play smoothly, and if people are running into netcode issues and things like that, they are not going to stick around, because there's nothing more frustrating than knowing you're behind cover and you got hit by that bullet that came out of their gun like it was in the movie Wanted. It's like, dude, that is frustrating, you know? So server stability is a must. Weapon balance, that's going to be key. We don't need for there to be one or two guns that are so OP that there becomes a meta and people run around losing their minds to get it and to use it on everybody else. If that is the case, we got to jump on it as soon as possible, either dial that weapon or two down, or better yet, bring the other ones up if we can do so without ruining the balance of like the TTK and all those other logistical things that I know nothing about. You know, I don't speak for everybody, but I can confidently say I love being able to use an assortment of weapons. And if there's a game with 20 weapons, and I'm just throwing out arbitrary numbers, I don't know how many guns Arc Raiders is going to have on launch, but let's just say there's 20 different weapons. If everybody is only using one or two, then the other 18 or 19 are obsolete. They don't matter, you know? I want for every single gun to matter in its own way, shape, or form, you know? Constant AI tuning. This is something that I believe has to stay at the forefront, and I have to preface this by saying the AI in Arc Raiders is pretty darn smart, and they play rather well. They know when to be aggressive, and they know when to get after you. I want to make sure that we don't become complacent with the way the AI and the Arc robots, whatever you want to call them, we don't want to become complacent with the way they play, because if we do, we learn their patterns and they're no longer a threat. So making sure that we, and I keep saying we like I'm a part of Embark Studios, but Embark, you all just have to make sure that you continue to fine tune the Arc bots so that they are somewhat unpredictable. And I believe they use some type of AI learning model for the Arc robots. So keep feeding it information, keep feeding, so that way the bots get smarter and smarter, and that sense of danger or that sense of a threat never fully goes away. There also needs to be quality matchmaking balance here, and this needs to be in place to make sure that we protect new players and we protect those casual gamers, all right? And I do want to say they should have their ups and downs, right? A casual or a new player, maybe not a new player, but a casual player should have a run where they run into a pretty talented team and they lose everything. It is what it is, but they should also have a run where they have an equal opportunity fight and they can win that gunfight, or they win that gunfight not necessarily easily, but a bit easier than usual per se, right? There should be a balance there across the board, and I know nothing about matchmaking or balancing or any of that stuff, so I leave that to you geniuses at Embark to figure out. But if a casual player or a new player gets stomped out the gate, or they just get stomped consistently to the point where they can only really use free kits, then they're not going to last long in Arc Raiders. They're going to hit the door. They're not going to care about how cool or how immersive the game is. Oh, the game has procs chat and this, that, and the third. They ain't going to care about none of that. They're going to say, dude, I get stomped. I can't even survive a single run out there in the Rust Belt. I'm done with this game. They're going to refund it, or they're just never going to play it again, you know? So Embark, let's make sure that matchmaking is balanced there. I believe spending those first few months really dialing in those things, and there's probably other things we can throw on the list or add in there. If there is anything else that comes to mind, drop it in the comments. I would love to hear it. But I believe Embark just needs to really focus on those major things, those major components over the course of the first few months to make sure we're really locked in. Reason being is because following this, rolling into like months 4, 5, and 6, we're going to transition into that follow-up phase, right? Or phase 2. And of course, this is where things really start to get interesting here, you know? Reason being is because this is where that FPS fatigue starts to settle in for my Battlefield and my Call of Duty enthusiasts, and they're going to be looking for something else to rock and roll on. I believe this is Arc Raiders' window to really thrive and to really shine. I believe that first and foremost, Embark, we got to have a strong marketing push around this time here. And that marketing push can be for I don't know, the next season or whatever the case may be. But in this marketing push, talk about all the new content that's coming, right? Talk about the new maps, the new weapons, the continuation of the story, drop a few lore tidbits here and there, do things like that so that as people see the commercials on TV or the ads on YouTube or on Twitch or whatever, they're like, you know what? I did hear about Arc Raiders before, but I was so focused on Call of Duty or Battlefield, I didn't pay it no mind. I'm tired of those games right now, but this Arc Raiders looks dope, yo. Like, what is that arc robot? What is that gun? What is that map, right? Now you have people's curiosity, and now they're going to go to Google, they're going to go to YouTube, they're going to type in Arc Raiders, see that the game is mad dope. It runs like a hot knife through butter or whatever analogy you want to use. And they're like, yo, I'm going to drop the 40 on it, man. I got my money back, whatever. I'm going to do it. Let's go, right? And this is where we all start to see Arc Raiders slowly but surely wave up, because now we have a plethora of those casual gamers coming in. And the best part about that is we all win as a byproduct of it, because we have more people to bring into Arc Raiders that can enjoy the experience with us, whether if we know them or they're completely random, because hey, we got things like Prox Chat. And then on the other hand, Embark Studios makes more bread so that they can keep pouring into Arc Raiders. They can maybe pour into the finals with the money they make, or pour into a new IP. I don't know what they're doing, but they get more money, and they're one of the few studios that I personally feel like is deserving of making a little bit more cheddar. Now, at this point, just because we're starting to get some casual gamers in, the job's not done, right? Embark, we got to make sure that we are keeping players hooked for the long run. I mean, years upon end, yo. So we got to make sure the end game is on point, right? We got to make sure the replay value is through the roof, especially if we're not doing things like wipes. So those in-game systems, the progressions, all that stuff needs to be baked to perfection. Consistent and regular updates got to come in, lore beats, missions, all that good stuff has to keep rolling so that we continue to stay enticed and so that we can continue to live in the world of Arc Raiders. Because once I sign in, I personally don't plan on signing out, yo. But with this all being said, I have to hand the mic over to you all. What do you all think Arc Raiders needs to be able to survive this storm, to survive through its initial 3-month period, 6-month period, year, and beyond? Let me know down in the comments below. Until next time, it's been your boy Cray. I am signing out, and I will catch you all in the next one.